to uh, resolve the question about youthfulness. Well, the question should be what happened to young people between 1979 and now, to the point that they are very, very old people with old ideas. And it makes sense that a driven generation, the generation that is referred to as Generation X, would be more comfortable with people who understand their perspectives about issues, their cultural inclinations, and their general attitude to life, which is that they cannot continue with the old ways of doing things. So it would naturally be expected that these young people would be inclined towards youthful looking person. But that's not what I'm here for in this race. I mean, I'm here in this race to do something different about governance. We have had a lot of young people, honestly, who are even younger than me, who have been governors in this dispensation. And I will tell you that young people are not proud of those kind of younger or youthful people. It's about ideas, it's about competence, it's about relevance, it's about pedigree and integrity. That's what I'm here to do, and not to use one of the sentiments that are frequently used in politics, because then you're going to find somebody who shows up and say, well, Christians are clamoring for a Christian president. I'm the Christian candidate. Muslims are clamoring for a Muslim candidate. I'm the Muslim candidate. That is not the way politics ought to be played. It ought to be that a leader who is passionate about the future of this country, with all intent, is the one who is giving the opportunity, and people should have inclination towards those people. It should be about ideas, because there are people in this race who are younger than me. There's a 38-year-old guy. The SDP guy, Adebayo, is 50 years old. Yes, he turned 51 yesterday, so he met me on the throne of 51. But he's still very youthful. And I've seen several others who said they're younger than me. And I believe that. And what I'm saying in a nutshell is that this should not be the criteria for electing the next president, because just as we have a lot of irresponsible adults in Nigeria, there are a lot of irresponsible young people. We've seen them operate within the political scene, and they're not, they're pretty ugly.
Okay, so you know, as the discussion has been going on, some political pundits they have described this presidential race as a three us or sometimes for us race. They will tell us that the candidate of the All Progressives Congress, Bola Tinubu, is a force to reckon with. They would mention the name of the, PDP presidential candidate, Alhaji Atiku Abubakar, and then there is Peter Obi of Labour Party, and then the name of Rabiu Kwakwaso of NNPP comes into. The name doesn't feature in this. So, does this represent the reality for you, or do you disagree with it?
No, it represents the reality for the kind of manipulative punditry that's been a burden on our political development. I think we do ourselves serious injustice when we reduce very serious matters, serious races of life and death nature to people who have not demonstrated in any way that they have capacity, or they have backgrounds that show that they're able to pull this country out of the doldrums. So this came from the press. That's the reality. The press decided who to put at at the front, and they keep promoting them. Saying that the people with the brightest ideas don't even get enough mention. For instance, this should be a race that should be about ideas. And that Nigeria has failed consistently with the same set of people who are, who pundits claim are the front runners. Let me take you back a little bit. For you to be a front runner, in the academic sector, right? If you are going to be a professor in the academic sector, you must publish books to show that you qualify, or you can be considered as a person who is a person of note in his own selected field. The same thing ought to have applied to the political sector. A person who has never visited the office to talk about his ideas should not be, according to pundits, a frontliner. A person who has never passed any kind of test should not be regarded as a frontliner. But this is part of how Nigerians are manipulated to believe that their worst should be their best. And I will reject it because not only do we know these persons, having known some of them for several decades, we also, between all of us, have also seen the best they can offer the country. And the best has put us as or the place where a child newly born is likely to die before the age of 5, a place where there are 133 million of the citizens in what they call multi-dimensional poverty. That's how the Nigerian poverty is described. Dregs of society at its best hands. It doesn't go well for us.
Mr. Sowore, I'm sure you must have heard people saying, oh, Sowore should have started, will have been better being a senator or a member of the House of Representatives. How will you react to that? Why the big office?
Psychological operations, and this is how oppressors operate. They look at you with capacity and put out a series of language that denigrates you, right? It's just like the days of slavery. Every slave is a slave. But when the white man wants to make you look good, they'll call you a house nigger. What's the house nigger? You're a slave who serves the master inside the house. But when it's time to sleep, where do you sleep? You still sleep in the shed where the other slaves sleep. So the psychological operation that we are doing to ourselves politically is to say that, hey, Shore should go to the Senate, but Buhari should be president. Does it make sense that a person who doesn't remember his name should be president where the most vibrant guy goes to the Senate? It doesn't make any sense. Where countries are in need of leaders, they look for them. Whether they are young or middle age, what they are looking for, number one is character. Then they are looking for those traits that can make the leader lead them through particularly periods of crisis and difficulty. It's not to say that we must go and pick the worst amongst us to handle the most sensitive position in the country, the most important position in the country, and then relegate the best to the less important position. It doesn't make sense, and people should stop saying that. What makes any other candidate more qualified than me is what you should be looking for. And I've said it, if the candidates are sure that they are more qualified, let's engage in a debate. It's part of how we settle this matter. But they won't come to a debate. You will not force them to a debate. And you keep saying that I should go to the Senate, whereas Atiku should go to the presidency. But do you know that in 1992, Atiku was a candidate in the SDP convention primaries. He lost the election. In 1992, I was a candidate in the Student Union president election at the University of Lagos. I won the election. If he had been president at that time, I would have been an opposition to his policies if they didn't favor students. So after how many years, the same person is still running, never won an election. He was vice president, did nothing for you, and you keep promoting him as a more qualified person than a person who had progressively led his life, sacrificed a lot, helped his country to attain democracy when there was no democracy, or when the democracy that he fought for in 1992. I'm talking about Atiku now specifically. Found that. Where was Atiku in 1993 when that democracy floundered? Nowhere to be found. We stood still with Abiola. Well, even after Abiola died, we ensured that we carried on until we had democracy. When democracy was achieved, we didn't stop. We ensured that we strengthened the democracy that we fought for. So how is it that Atiku is more qualified than me to be president, other than being older? Nothing. How is it that Tinubu is more qualified than me? We all fought for democracy in 1992. Well, you can question how they were fighting because they left the country. And now it has surfaced that there were drug trades involved and they were having some other things that they were doing where they pretended that they were fighting for them. They were actually selling drugs. But that's a conversation for another day. You look at Peter Obi. What did he do for the country? In 1993, can you ask where he is? He was 8 years the governor of his state, Anambra State. Where is the achievement? If the moment we ask, people start getting emotional. Why are you questioning him? Well, I know one road he built at the back of my house, but I can't take the picture now because my camera is not working. But that's not how leaders work, because Kwame Nkrumah built a motorway in Ghana in the 50s before I was born. It's still there. So if you're a leader, can you show me a hospital you built where you yourself can check in and treat yourself after 8 years in government? You can't show me. You get emotional. You say, how about the school? Did you build any school that your children can go to get educated? You said, no, my children went to school in London because that's their choice. I respect that. But don't come and tell me that these guys have achieved anything that will now make me, who knows everything and better than them, who can actually pass my ideas to you, to not be relegated to a Senate while they are presidents. It doesn't make sense. And we've been great people to even respect for themselves. But I don't belong in that category of people who can be told that, oh, why didn't you stay in the Senate? The question you should have asked is that in 1993, why didn't they stay on the street also and fight with us to attain democracy?
Yes, sir.
You know,
Okay.
whereas they were hiding under their bed.
Yeah. Mr. Sowore, your
Yeah.
record as a student activist back in the day, is well established.
Yes.
And then when I see news about your presidential ambition, particularly on social media, above the method you used in those days, student activism, and that doesn't show that you've evolved into the kind of approach that the presidential election race requires. I'm sure. I mean, I believe you sometimes see those comments. How do you react to them?
I don't react to things that has to do, like I said, psych ops, right? Tell me, how does the president behave? Is it by stealing, or is it by killing people or jailing people? The job of a president of a country is fundamentally to lead the country to progress and prosperity, peace, and to also be the person who fights the most for their citizens, right? If you go to the United Nations, what do leaders talk about? They talk about their country in the most passionate way, right? That is what student leaders did during our own time. If I wasn't a student leader like that, some of my colleagues would not have named me on the university, and I can read the reasons why. Some of them were periods that the school came and said they want to increase school fees, and they can't afford it anyway. There are times that it will be that court members came to the university and wanted to kill everybody they could find, and we said no. That's an approach that protects life, isn't it? And the rest, look at my pedigree. If I didn't move forward, how did I set up Sahara Reporters? having never been to journalism school before in my life. And I set up from the scratch, and it became a global media conglomerate. How did that happen with a person who hasn't changed his approach? How did I graduate from one of the best universities in the US? There are top 10 universities that are referred to as Ivy League. I graduated with a master's degree after leaving Lagos at Columbia University in New York. If I didn't change my approach, how did I make it so for so long in life? How is it that everybody who is talking about progress today, about democracy, can count me in? The richest people, some of the people with the greatest ideas. If these approaches did not improve, I'm just telling you that people say that so that they make you feel like you are nobody. And that's been part of how Nigerians operate. It is something that was handed down by Nigerian leaders to its citizens to say, look, apart from us, look at us. No family is entitled to be president of Nigeria. When I'm done, it'll be my son. Anybody else who is aspiring, call him a name, put him down so that other people will not have that kind of idea that they're actually greater than who they are. But I'm for greatness. I admit that I come from nowhere and I was nobody before now. But I've been to the end of the world. And any other thing people are saying, it's also sometimes a reflection of how people are. They have looked at themselves, come to the conclusion that they cannot grow because that's where the society put them, and they don't want anybody else to grow beyond that. But that is pedestrian. What is important here today is leadership. Am I able to speak to the issues affecting him? Definitely. Can I represent this country very well? Can I represent the aspirations of the people? Can I fight for them? Can I ensure that their children go to school? Can I provide schools, hospitals, roads that work for them and make them feel proud as citizens of this country? Can I pay people salaries and ensure that we grow this country in a way that is technologically futuristic? Can we have Nigerians who can work with us to make the country work? Definitely. As long as these things are part of my DNA and makeup and development process, every other thing you hear is part of politics. And it's acceptable that people will look at you and say, hey, sometimes people look at you, there are people who have looked at me in 2018 and said, if you don't cut your hair, right, you are not going to be, you can't be president if your hair is mohawk. You understand? And I keep my mohawk because the only way you can keep a hairstyle is if you have hair. Yes. And apologies to those of you who don't have much hair. Uh, but the truth is that even if you look at the period of independence for Africa, hair was part of the symbolism of resistance. Look at Mandela's hair when he had hair. It was the parts, Lumumba, Nkrumah. All of them had some kind of hairstyle that is unique to both their style and their strategy. It happens in sports. You want to play good soccer, sometimes your hair is part of how people uh, notice you and how they relate with you. You want to be an entertainer, hair has always been political. So I'm just using that as an example, but and to explain to people that I have not only done all this as I explained to you, I've been a university lecturer in the US for over 10 years, taught in a school for 10 years, I taught in another school for about a year, and combine a range of these global activities together. Maybe my only crime is that I didn't delve into, you know, criminal wealth accumulation, such that you look at me and say, Sowore has a private jet. Maybe we should respect that. Or he has a Rolls Royce. But that's not what I came here to do. I came here to build people, not to build houses for myself.
Mr. Sowore, what is that thing that keeps you going? I mean, you have a pending court case. There was a time you were
They have
restricted
they
to
have
Abuja.
they have a pending court case, not me. They are the ones who have to prove in court
Okay,
that I committed a crime.
currently on bail.
Yes.
You were at the time restricted to Abuja.
Yes.
As we speak, you have not been able to visit your family abroad. What
Because
is that thing that keeps you going?
because the way I look at Nigeria, and this is my own honest personal opinion, Nigeria is a vast prison where people are restricted to different sections of the prison. So we are just like a bunch of crabs inside a big pot, and everybody's trying to get out. And you know what Bob Marley says about rat race. We're on the rat race. They said even when you win the rat race, you remain a rat. So you might be worried about Sowore being restricted to Abuja, but you are also restricted somehow too. I'm not referring to you personally. Maybe it's a financial restriction, maybe it's an educational restriction, maybe an opportunity restriction, because your country is a vast prison. It should never have happened that any citizen is restricted to any part of the country, because not only is it unconstitutional, it's criminal to allege that somebody committed a crime he didn't commit. But what keeps me going is that I'm just like every one of you, my ultimate goal is total liberation. And my liberation is tied to the liberation of other Nigerians, the ones who might be, mentally restricted, uh, some who might be economically and socially and culturally or religiously restricted. Everybody is aiming towards liberation. My own is physical. You can tell, you can see it. And mine is easier to break because it is known. It is those who are restricted, who can't see what is restricting them, that are most in limbo. And we have to liberate everybody. We have
So,
to.
so you talk about liberation, and then you have a background as an activist. You are not the first activist to join the presidential race. Like you mentioned, there was at the
Chief
time
Gani Fire.
Chief Ganifari. I mean, shockingly, people didn't warm up to him at the polls.
Yeah.
Why do you think that your case will be different?
I'm not making a different case. I'm making a case for this country to attain the kind of leaders it deserves.
I mean,
Right.
why do you think you'll get a different outcome from what Ganifari got?
Well, already we've gotten a different outcome because Ghani started it all. When Ghani started, I don't even think he had this kind of national, um, conversation around his candidacy. I wasn't around because I was in the U.S. at that time. But because he did it, you know, he's a, you know, he's a foreigner for us, and we're following his footsteps partially. If there are things he didn't do well, which I doubt there is, it has to be done well. But what is most important is that people are even warming to alternative ideas, right? And largely regretting some of those mistakes they made in the past. Because I can guarantee you that when Gani will be sitting with journalists in those days, they ask him the same question. But Gani, what do you want? You are a lawyer, you're an activist. Why don't you stay where you are? He came out, he didn't stay where he is. He came out and said the country can be better. People scoffed at him, they laughed at him, they mocked him. The same thing happened to Fela. Fela also ran, he ran a political party for a period. But today, everybody looks back and say, oh, we wish we took the right decision to have followed these guys when they came and preached the liberation to us. So you reject it at your own peril. But I'm not saying that I'm special. What I'm just saying is that I'm presenting myself, I'm presenting alternative ideas that are clear and showing you the path to liberty, the path to progress, to development, to prosperity and peace. You have a right to accept or reject it. That's your fundamental right. And that Gani had done it before. And that Gani did it and you rejected it at that time, or your parents rejected it, doesn't mean you should make the same mistake.
So your first attempt was in 2019,
That's correct.
and then you are in the race again. Do you think you got more popular? Do you think because back then, I mean, 2019, you were overshadowed. You were not really seen like that. Do you think you've done more?
This country has always overshadowed great things, good things, because, to be particularly blunt, Nigeria always operates on a world, spectrum. It's always like there's an association with lack of progress in generally projected choice for electoral periods like this. And that's part of what we are here to change. It is difficult to make a case for it if the citizenry hasn't come to that consciousness that they are tired of slavery and they want to get out of the situation that they have found themselves or into which they have been put by these successive leaders. But I think that I'm the only candidate that's existing today that never stopped campaigning since 2019. And that's the conversation we had when I arrived here. It's like, I don't feel like I need to travel to every town and city again because those issues that were discussed in 2019 have not changed. The people have only got poorer. There are places I went to in Zamfara, Katsina, in Sokoto, and several other northern states in 2019 that you cannot go to today because of insecurity. So I went to refugee camps in Adamawa, in Taraba, in Edo State. I think I visited in some other places. And I promise that I'm not coming back to any refugee camp if I don't win the election or if I run again until we're able to get them out of those situations. So I decided nobody can make me go back to a refugee camp today or an internally displaced person's camp because it's unconscionable to keep going back there to go and ask them to smile for the photograph, whereas their situation has not changed. So it's just a thing of shame, and to suddenly remember that there are IDPs when elections happen. So I don't do those things, and it was because I did it before. I went to Bakassi. They're still there. So if you don't do anything to improve the condition of people, don't go and mock them. So that's part of why you see that we are running what I call an eco-friendly campaign this time around. What is an eco-friendly campaign? I'm not getting on a jet as frequently as we used to do before because it destroys the environment. I'm not driving all around aimlessly because people already know what I stand for and they understand where to meet me and where my convictions lie. uh, this is what has happened in 2022. But in terms of acceptance, popularity, if you ask me, way better than 2019, and we should, be grateful for that. That the society is following enough to see that, oh, this particular guy is different. But to take you back a little bit, in 2019 as well, there were a bunch of young people or youthful candidates. The question you should ask, what happened to them? Nigeria happened to most of them, but I'm still here. And I'm here having overcome plenty of adversity. As you said, within 2019 and now, I've been charged for, you know, all kinds of offenses, grievous offenses like treasonable felony. At the point that offense wasn't catching, they came and arrested me for breach of peace 2021. I broke my nose. After they were done with breach of peace and it didn't work, one politician was mobilized to charge me for cybercrime. We haven't even gone to arraignment, so those are hanging. It was during that period in Abuja that I was restricted that a police officer shot me with a riot gun on the thigh. Around that same period, my younger brother was murdered on the highway. Until today, there's no explanation as to what happened. And he was killed at the police checkpoint, which the claim was vacated at that point. So many things have happened, and I'm still here standing. And that should be a testimony for a very ready leader who is able to take the bullets for his people. Yeah.
If you're just joining us, this is the roundtable with the Punch newspaper. Our guest today is Mr. Omoyele Sowore, the presidential candidate of the African Action Congress. So the discussion continues. Um, I would let my co-anchor.
Mr. Sowore, you
Yeah.
will agree with me that political platform is key in Nigerians' election. And maybe that could be one of the reasons why you've not really been flying as you would want to. Today, there are reports that the APC, for instance, is looking into possibility of aligning with smaller parties. Are you in for that kind of arrangement?
No, there's no alliance that is possible between darkness and light. I can never align with APC. I can't align with PDP. I can't align with so many of the political parties that exist today. But to let you know, we are the one who started the alliance uh, activities first in this election cycle. We're in alliance with the PRP Vanguard, the original PRP, and this was widely reported. And we were even on NTA today with the chairman of the PRP Vanguard, Mr. Abdulmajid Dauda. Daudu. So we do not need the kind of alliance that APC is looking for. Those are transactional alliances. Our own is mostly ideological alliances. We align with people who believe that this country must experience growth, development, peace, prosperity, and progress. And using certain parameters that has to do with human indexes that shows that Nigerians are doing well, are going to do well. And it's important that the personalities that are involved also have stood the test of time. You know, the PRP was set up by uh, Elijah Aminu Khan, one of the finest politicians in this country, one of the most honest. You know, at a point, Chino Achebe was a member of the PRP. So we're in alliance already. You know, you cannot be in two alliances with two different people or groups at the same time or association. So that alliance is not involving us. And they know that we are not involved in such alliance conversation. So, but we already have an alliance with the oppressed. That's the first alliance. And these other ones are very interesting alliances of those who are pro people, not those who are against our people.
So a few days ago,
Yes.
INEC expressed a fear or they sounded a lot of warning that election might not hold because of the, you know, instead of security or insecurity in the country.
Yes.
And then there are those who have said that, we have been living with insecurity for a few years now. And then we've had elections even amid insecurity. And they would like to interpret what INEC said to be that it's an excuse, advanced excuse for to play games or something.
So,
Are you one of those who think it that way?
no, it's not about thinking. If you're a Nigerian, your attitude to any news must be that there's a conspiracy behind it. Because I've lived long enough to know that every terrible rumor that started has come to pass. And there has been people in Nigeria within the political scene who have been advocating for an interim government, you know. And when I heard INEC saying elections may not hold, I thought about it from that angle. But the second angle is the political class, especially the ones who know this time around that they're not going to be able to win election in a free and fair mode. They always come and create doubt and confusion in the minds of the public. And INEC is part of that group. You know, I participated in 2019 election, and I can say it categorically. I've said it everywhere. There was no election in 2019, but this is how they started. Where I was waiting in my village for the elections, and INEC just suddenly on the eve of the 2019 election postponed the election by I think 2 weeks. Yes, you know what happened? Some of our colleagues that came from the US to vote, US, Europe, South Africa, they had to leave. And this was not a small number. I'm not saying the number would help me win or would have made me win the election. But the moment that election was postponed, people had doubts as to whether the election will hold again. And they lost interest. In 2015, election was also postponed for security reasons. Why are they talking about postponing election when the governor of Borno State is saying that 90% of Borno is now free from Boko Haram control? If you ask me, it's not true. But what they are telling you is that 90% of Bono is free for rigging, so that they will bring out their big numbers from all these fake places where they claim that people are voting and there are not even people living in those areas. Well, that's a conversation for another day. But most importantly, it shows that INEC cannot be trusted because INEC is an incompetent electoral body. I have said this for too many times. It doesn't matter how you look at it. Elections have been organized by INEC. It's always had hiccups. Even in Oshun, where they came that the beavers, which is their magic wand, worked. We are hearing about overvoting, we are hearing about over registration and all those kind of election malpractices that they claim beavers had resolved. I logged into their website during Oshun election for live results. The website is hogwash. It has no capacity to handle as many connections as the number of people who are trying to access. So as a result, we weren't getting timely results. Sometimes you get the documents cut off. What are they going to do during the main election when over probably 50 million people will be trying to access the website from at home and abroad? They're not ready. That's the truth. But the people of Nigeria should know that they should make it clear that they are not accepting anything less than a free and fair election because we are paid for it already. and INEC should not come up with any excuse. I heard the Minister of Information came out this morning and said INEC was just joking. But who would you believe between the minister and INEC? Right? That's the question.
Okay, if peradventure you lose this election like you did the other time,
I didn't lose any election. There was no election in 2019.
you lost the election, you didn't win.
No, there was no election. You can't lose what did not happen.
But
It's just like you go to
in an election.
no. It's just like you go to the World Cup. There are rules for playing in the World Cup, right? And the day you want to play the finals, nobody showed up. The only one team showed up. You understand? Because the other team was held up in the preparation room, and then they declare a winner. Will you call that a final?
Why did you go to court to challenge the result of the
I was arrested before I could go to court. Yes, it's true. But I wasn't interested in going to court because I also understand the judiciary, that they are all in this together. It's the judiciary that made the person in government in Imo State that participated in the election and he was number 4. What are you talking about?
So if you have expressed doubts, in the sincerity of INEC, and then you said that the election didn't hold, it doesn't.
Ultimately, the way they are pushing Nigerians left and right, the button, the red button will be pressed one day. And part of how to get to that destination of a revolutionary outcome to resolve the Nigerian problem might be their own mistakes. You understand? So I participate as a citizen. It's my right. They are the ones who came out and said we want to hold election. I'm going for election. But when you don't hold an election, then don't be surprised at the outcome of how the citizens react to what you call an election that ended up being a selection. I am telling you, you're a journalist. I've also practiced journalism for probably some 16 years now. And I can tell you that this guy didn't hold any election in 2019. Just like there was no election that elected Yaradua. And he came out and said it, said, look, I agree that this was not an election that should have produced a leader. What we are saying to you is that you owe us a duty to give us election. Each time you don't, we let the people know that this was not an election.
Do you believe that there's going to be an election by your own definition?
We are expecting an election, but I can't force one on them. But that's what we're expecting.
You seem not to believe in the system. Why are you participating in it?
Well, it's just like saying because I don't believe in the way Nigeria has been run, I should go and tear my passport. That's my choice. Participation is everybody's choice. But the question you should be asking me is, what is my own conscious participation in public life? Nobody has a right to determine that because I'm a citizen of Nigeria. I am participating because I believe things should be done right. And I'm speaking to what should be done right. Nobody should expect anything less than normal or accurate or decent from leaders of our society. So am I cynical about Nigerian leaders or processes? Of course I am. I've always been. And I've never been wrong all along. When we were in the university and Babangida was trying to hand over power, we're the ones who were saying that he will not run, he will not hand over power. People were making fun of us when we were student leaders, said, you guys are too cynical, you are too pessimistic, And I agree. Nigeria will make you a pessimist, even if you are the most optimistic person in the world. And who is the pessimist? The person that expects the worst and hope for the best. I hope for the best all the time.
So it's about less than 2 months of the election now. Yeah. So how much ground have you covered, and then what do you think would happen? How will you rate your prospects this time?
What do you mean by grounds in terms of?
Your campaign. How many
I've explained to you that the campaign strategy this time is different from 2019. It's different in terms of content, but there's nothing that has changed in Nigeria since 2019 to make me engage in another jamboree. What I mean is that when I campaigned in 2019, we visited 34 states. We only skipped 2 states. That was Borno and Yobe because of the security situation. But has anything changed as for me to now be rushing back to those states? No. Have I not understood even the states more than I did in 2019? Yes, because I have sat in detention for 5 months, listening day in, day out to people who ruin Nigeria, found out who they are, talked about them, and come to the conclusion that I even understand better now because there's an inside world and an outside world in Nigeria. I've been to both. So in terms of spreading the ideas, I've also explained to you that how we exchange content today regarding campaigns and interaction and engagement has changed over time. When Punch 10 years ago did not have a studio like this. Reason, it's not your job to set up a studio to do multi-dimensional broadcasting or journalism. You were forced into it because the rest of the world was moving and your guys are smart enough to move on with the rest of the world. What were you doing before? And I'm just using this as an analogy. You were printing newspapers. You had to wait for the next day, and some people will come and carry it and take it to across the country. You call it structure. You have a distribution network. Today, what's your distribution network? Twitter, Facebook, Snapchat. There are some of you that swore by whomever that you never use Snapchat or Instagram. In fact, there were people who were preaching that these are satanic ways of distributing content. But today, how many people do you have on Twitter? Millions. How many people do you have on Facebook? If you are still printing newspaper, I can guarantee you, I see your newspaper but I doubt that you distribute up to 5,000 newspapers on a daily basis. But I was around in the 90s when Punch used to distribute over 600 to 700,000 newspapers per day. Reason is that the world has changed. The distribution, the creation of content has changed. If you write long stories today, you can be guaranteed that nobody will read it. More people will engage with the small contents you put out there because people have attention deficit disorder generally. They don't have time to read long stories. You must conform with the way they want. It's the way we are campaigning today. We are conforming with the way the world has changed and campaigning, throwing out content, ideas that people can engage with and generally distill, digest, and understand. And that doesn't include, like I said, hiring 5 jets to fly to Kano. We do go to these places. By the time you get to your Kano and back, I have reached much more, many people. I don't know if somebody is checking the analytics of the conversation we're having now. It's possible there are thousands of people watching it. By the time we are done, thousands more will watch it. That's what they want. You cannot pay for, you cannot get the number of people watching this interview today all over the world because it might not be through one channel. People are sharing it. You can't put them in a stadium. And they might be some of the most intelligent people who really want to vote, but they have their own crowd. They have people they can reach out to. I'm just telling you how multidimensionally the world has changed and how that is also shaping how we're engaging with voters in Nigeria today. But there are people who are still doing things in the 1920 ways. And we're not saying they are not relevant. We're just saying that we're moved past them.
Well, you're right that the dynamics have changed, but you know that Punch remains the most famous people in Nigeria.
You are talking to publishers or reporters, Don't let us start that argument. But do I respect Punch fantastically? You guys have done very well in terms of transformation. You understand? I was at a conference when the day Sanusi was removed from power, at UBA office in Lagos. And I've sent all the journalists sat there. I said, get out and cover the news of the day and put it out there. And they didn't. I left the conference to go and cover. As Sanusi was getting out of the plane and he was being harassed by DSS. When the story was done by Sowore reporters, every other newspaper in Nigeria carried it. And I wasn't even in Lagos. Sowore reporters wasn't even in Lagos for a long time. You understand? So what I'm saying here is that, yes, you're doing very well, but you should also understand that had you sat back and just waited and be publishing print alone, you would have been out of business by now. Yes.
Mr. Sowore, you were quoted recently as saying that under your presidency, the Senate will be scrapped?
It's my legislative agenda and transformation agenda that we must cut down the cost of business, and that the Nigerian Senate or the House of Rep, we do not need a a bicameral legislative system because it's too expensive. And just as I was dropping that joint, President Muhammadu Buhari claimed that our legislators added about, I don't know how many trillion naira, padded the budget with that many trillion. And I was saying to myself, and according to advice from other people who have listened to this brilliant idea, that maybe we should not be thinking about even the Senate. We should think about the House of Rep. Cut it off. Let's have, we should be able to do okay with just the Senate with 90, is it 107 members. They can adequately represent the constituencies in Nigeria at that level and check the government. Otherwise, we are just going to go bankrupt one day because we have irresponsible overheads that we don't need. That money can go into education, healthcare, and capital projects that are needed for the country. Why would you have a Senate that is populated by former governors? Some of them are even collecting salaries. They are collecting pension on one side and collecting allowances and salaries from the Senate. It's a realistic thing to do, and we must pursue vigorously that we cut down not only the cost of government, but the size of government, because government has become a bogey in Nigeria.
So, Mr. Sowore, as we round off this programming session today, I would like to ask you, if you ask a lot of Nigerians now, they believe that, they become worse off, economically speaking, than the last 7 years. There's outcry out there. If the APC, which is the ruling power now, wins this election, would you be surprised?
I will be surprised. But it will be because we need to analyze two things. First is if there was a credible election. Because the APC is used to winning elections that don't happen. Very shady party. The same thing applies to the PDP when they were in power. Secondly, if it is true that they won the election, then we might need to examine Nigerians as a people. If there's something wrong with our ability to take punishment infinitesimally, like in a very elastic way, like, are we not tired? Do we ever get tired of punishment? Do we ever get tired of being abused? I would like to find out what is wrong with us. Why would a people who are seemingly convenient with hardship and mystery, and it's nothing new. I'm just reiterating it because sometimes, honestly and generally, you question yourself, and I ask myself this question sometimes, especially when you read, comments, articles, and positions, even by pundits, like you mentioned earlier, who are brazen about very ignorant, very holistically, self-inflicting injuries about the state of the nation. You question what is wrong with us. And some of them sometimes are people you happen to respect. I was in detention one day, and there was journalist hangout because they usually bring us out to pick food, and they'll let you watch. After a while, when they got comfortable with detaining me, they'll let you watch TV. Typically, when I'm coming downstairs, change the channels to wrestling and all those irrelevant channels. And so I had this guy on journalist hangout who was saying brazenly and conveniently and ignorantly that the closure of the border is the best thing that's ever happened in Nigeria's history. Because according to him, he discovered Nigerian rice and it's the best in the world. Yes, this is journalist. He had glasses on. I remember the guy, I think he's a writer for the Nation newspaper. And that Buhari should please never reopen Nigerian border as long as he's alive, because he wants to keep eating that Nigerian rice that he claimed to have discovered. But you know that when Buhari eventually reopened the border, he apologized. At least veiled apology that the closure of the border did not achieve the intended purpose for which. In fact, after they closed the border, the price of rice went up and remains so to today because it was a stupid decision. But people will praise it. People will say it brazenly on TV. They will be hitting their chest, as I'm saying this with authority, that this position of the government is the best. They said the same thing when June 12 was annulled. Traditional rulers will go there and say, we have seen Babangida and they showed us one clip like this. Abiola is not the messiah for the country, right? When Obasanjo was coming for third time, they said, there's nobody in Nigeria that can continue running Nigeria the way Obasanjo was running it. When Abacha wanted to remain as, he wanted to change from military to, 5 political parties in Nigeria came together and said he's their candidate. And they were swearing that it's the best thing that would have ever happened to Nigeria. But the day he died, they said, no, we advise the idiot. They hear words. We advise Obasanjo, he doesn't listen. If Buhari lives today, some of the people that are defending him will come and say, don't mind the man. He's a useless man. He has air infection. Shebi tell you now. You understand? So what it does for us, on a serious note, is it leaves conscious citizens to remain steadfast. Because no matter what we say at the end of this, whomever wins this election, right? Like Bonner Boy said, we are coming back to eat our breakfast, right? Some we get breakfast and lunch together. It's called brunch.
Thank you very much, Mr. Sowore. This is where we bring the program to a close for today. Thank you, our viewers, for being with us. This is the Roundtable with the Punch. You can follow us on our social media handles, the Twitter, Facebook, and the YouTube Punch newspaper. Thank you very much for being with us. Thank you for watching.